Okay, so let's talk about where you can start first. And if you are deciding to go towards United Kingdom, you will have to pass one of two English proficiency exams, be it for PLAB or be it for MRCP. Before you can sit for the PLABs, however, you do have to clear this, either the Ielts or the OET. So I know a lot of times people wonder, why do we have to take an English proficiency exam if we are doctors? But you have to realize that in the United Kingdom, there are a lot of accents, there are a lot of dialects, and as a doctor, if we don't have sufficient communication with them, if we don't understand what they're saying, and if they don't understand what we're saying, you're not going to really do a good job as a doctor. So the two types currently that the General Medical Council takes is the Ielts and the OET. So we're going to discuss the Ielts first because this is one that most people are most familiar with. The OET only recently became available. So there are three types of Ielts. It can be the academic, general training, or life skills. And the one we're worried about, since we're going for professional registration, is the academic version. Now, there is another variant that a lot of us kind of get confused about, and that is the Ielts for UKVI. So the Ielts for UKVI is the exact same exam as the normal Ielts, but the only difference is you can use it for your UK visa purposes as well. When you decide to go to the UK, you're going to be worried about two types of visas. One is your standard visitor visa. This is the visa you can go to take PLAB 2, or if you decide to take PLAB 1 in the UK, you can go on the same visa as well. And the other one is your Tier 2 visa. This is your work permit visa. For your Tier 2 status, you will require an Ielts for UKVI. The visitor visa doesn't need any sort of Ielts at all. You just need Ielts for the PLAB exam. So I know a lot of times people think, well, if I take the Ielts or if I take the Ielts for UKVI, is there any difference in the exam structure, or is the exam more difficult? It's the same exam, it's just that the Ielts for UKVI is a little bit more expensive, about £40 more. Sorry. Okay, so what's the best option? What I did, and in my opinion, if you have to take an exam, it's best to take the Ielts for UKVI because then you're done. You don't have to take any more Ielts after this. It will work for your PLAB, it will work for your GMC registration, and it'll work for your Tier 2 visa status. But that being said, sometimes you don't necessarily clear your Ielts on the first time around. And if you do the UKVI for that purpose, later on it can be used for your Tier 2 visa status. There's no sort of kind of thing where you have to do it right before you apply for your Tier 2 status. And the Tier 2 numbers that you need for UKVI is only a band 4. Versus for PLAB and for GMC registration, you need to have an overall score of 7.5 or a minimum of 7 in all of the modules. So what I mean by that is you can have, an 8 overall, but if you fall short of the minimum requirement per module, like if you get a 6.5, it is not considered valid. So basically, you're going to have to prove your English proficiency one way or the other before you can sit for the PLAB, or before you get GMC registration for the MRCP. So that's why I would suggest if you guys have to choose one, just go ahead and take the Ielts for UKVI, because again, like for PLAB 1, you can use the academic version, and you can use the Ielts for UKVI, but later on for the Tier 2, you're going to have to take the UKVI anyway. For GMC registration, both are accepted. The criteria that you're going to have to follow for that is essentially, like I said before, you have to at least get a 7 in all of the modules, and overall you need to get 7.5. You need to make sure you get these test scores in the same test, and what I mean by that is you can't mix and match your test scores. It may be that on one exam you got less marks in writing, but another one you did really well in writing, but you fell short in reading, and you were fine in reading in your first exam. You can't submit both test reports and be like, well, I kind of managed to get 7 across the board. It has to be in the same sitting, the same test, and it has to be the academic version. You also need to submit the original stamp and your test report number when you submit it for GMC registration. And the last part to keep in mind, what a lot of people forget, is it has to be the most recent sitting of your Ielts if you are submitting it for GMC registration. A lot of times what people do is they will take the academic version, and they know that later on they have to take the Ielts for UKVI for their Tier 2 visa, and they take it right before they have to do their GMC registration, because they're like, well, I only have to get a band 4. The problem with that is you can't then apply for GMC registration with your original Ielts. You would have to submit your Ielts for UKVI. And if you fall short on the requirements, you cannot apply for GMC registration. For your Tier 2 visa, aside from that, you can also do UKVI. UKVI has a system for checking your English language requirements, and you have to essentially submit paperwork to them to prove that your medical college courses were in English. It is cheaper than the Ielts and in the OET, but there's a lot of uncertainty involved with it. It takes time. You have to send the documents, and then you have to verify the documents, but it is an option. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the OET, or the Occupational English Test. If any of you have tried for the Australian Medical Council exams, you may have heard of this. It's essentially like the Ielts in the sense that it has the same structure, they're the same modules, but it has a medical and healthcare aspect to it. You have to write referral forms for the writing portion. You have to talk to a patient for the speaking portion. The listening thing may be a scenario between a doctor and a patient. It's kind of more directed towards medicine, not just pure English-based. You will need a B in each module of the exam and overall for it to be considered for GMC registration. All right, I know this is kind of small, but I'll just try and talk through it real quick. Essentially, these are the differences between the Ielts, or Ielts for UKVI, and the OET. As I mentioned before, you need to have the requirement of at least 7 in all of the modules and 7.5 overall for Ielts, and Ielts for UKVI. And this has to be in the same test. The academic version, the TRF number, and the most recent sitting of the exam. But for the OET, it has to be the medicine version. There are about 14 different subtypes of the OET. They also use it for nursing exam or for vets. So you can't choose the wrong one. It has to be the medicine version. And you need to have at least a grade B in each testing area in all of the modules and overall. Again, the candidate number has to be there, and it has to be in the most recent sitting. It's almost the same, the requirements for GMC, it's just the grading system is a little different. Both have the same validity of 2 years, so you have to plan accordingly when you decide to take this exam and then your further exams so that you can apply within time for the GMC. Otherwise, you'll have to take it again. For the Ielts, it costs £160. The Ielts for UKVI costs £200. And the OET, since it is an Australian exam, it costs 587 Australian dollars, and it's roughly about 332 pounds, but their website has a converter when you go pay that you can convert it into your local currency and then pay. As for availability, the Ielts is almost ubiquitous. It's in over 140 countries, and they have an exam almost every other day. OET is also available in India. It's in about 5 or 6 cities in India itself, but there are a lot of places in the world where it's not available. It's only in 40 centers comparatively, and they only take the exam 12 times a year. As for when it comes to retaking, you cannot take separate portions of the Ielts. You have to sit for the entire exam again. Like if you fail writing or if you fail in reading, you would have to take the entire paper again. OET, you can retake separate modules, but if you guys recall earlier what I mentioned about the GMC criteria, it has to be in the same sitting. So even though OET avails you the option to retake a module, the GMC will not accept it. There are a couple other points to consider. Since they only recently allowed the OET to be accepted for GMC registration, if you have taken it within 2 years validity after February 2016, if you've already done it, maybe you tried for Australia, they will take it, the GMC will accept it. But if it's taken before that, of course it will not be accepted, and if it's more than the 2 years, it will not be accepted. On top of that, the OET will get you the GMC registration, but again, for Tier 2 visa, you're either going to have to do Ielts for UKVI or the UKVI. So I hope you guys can understand why I suggest if you have to plan, take the Ielts for UKVI, because it's just one headache and then you're done. Okay, now the most important thing to consider here is when should you take these exams? So it really depends on where you are. If you're still in medical school, I would suggest planning to take it near the end of your medical degree, or maybe right after you take your final exams, again for that 2-year validity purpose. And if you're doing your internship, or if you have you're otherwise working, you just plan to take it around when the exams are. So overseas, the PLAB is held in March and November. So most people try and think about Ielts or OET in June. But if you want to take it in the UK, they have a June exam and a September exam. So you'd have to really start planning now if you want to sit for the June attempt in the UK. So then after that comes the question of when to book your PLAB 1. So IELTS and OET both take about 2 weeks to get your results, and then your overseas booking closes 1 month before the exam. Now I say it closes 1 month before the exam, but that doesn't mean you should bank on getting an available seat 1 month before the exam, because a lot of people want to sit for the exam. And you should ideally try and book 2 months before the booking date closes. Otherwise, there's no guarantee that you will get a seat. So when you go ahead and think about booking, you want to go ahead and make your online GMC account, and then from there, pay for the booking. So this is just kind of a breakdown. If you decide to sit, for instance, for the November attempt, like I mentioned before, around June, you should start your preparation for IELTS or for OET, and depending on how much time you think you need. Some people like to just use the material that I have on the website under the study and preparation. If you guys could just grab questionnaires, please, and go ahead and fill them out right in the front. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So we do have study and preparation material available on the website if you think that you're confident enough to just prepare by yourself. But if you do feel like you need extra preparation, by all means, tutoring, coaching, whatever works, because the IELTS is where most people, or the OET is where most people get hung up in their journey to the UK. And the reason for that is most of us don't give that much attention to how we write our English or how we speak our English or the reading preparations that this exam does require. So try and then sit for, let's say, the August attempt for the IELTS, and within 2 weeks, you would get the results so you can start your prep for PLAB. By September, ideally, you should have cleared either your IELTS or your OET. Otherwise, you can retake so that you give yourself a bit of a buffer in case you do not clear it in the first attempt. Then you can go ahead and open your GMC online account, book your PLAB 1, and in November you can sit for the PLAB 1.